Focus on keeping the clients that you do have, especially the profitable ones.
Professor Dawn Fotopoulos.
And here we are. Woo! And it's going to transform the way we do business. Are you ready? That's where the magic gets unleashed. Here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm Dawn Fotopoulos in Big Bed, New York City. It's so good to be with you. Double your cash flow with no extra effort. So all we're doing here is we are giving you bits and pieces of advice, simple things that you can do every single week to improve your cash flow. Last time we got together, that was our pilot webinar, we talked about invoicing, and the stuff was radioactive. If you weren't with us, you've got to absolutely listen to that. We told you how to create an invoice, when to send the invoice, how much money you should be invoicing, how frequently you should be invoicing, and how to find the accounts payable clerk at your top 10 clients. Super important, because that's the person who owns the keys to your cash flow. So if you missed it, we will send you the link. You got to let us know, send you the link. And eventually we will be publishing all of this behind a subscription wall on YouTube. But this is not available to the whole world. You guys have shown up. You're making a sacrifice of time, and we want to honor you for that. Okay, so what's my mission? I want to save 1 million small businesses in the next 3 years. And I know exactly how to do that because I've been doing this for at least 20 years. And we've saved at least 500 businesses so far, but we have an epidemic in this country among small businesses, and we've got to do something about it, and cash flow is the key. So the JP Morgan Institute has they just recently, about 18 months ago, came out with research, and it really made me stop cold. 75% of small businesses have less than 30 days of cash on hand. This is not a problem. It is an epidemic. If we have 31 million small businesses in the United States, guess what? Roughly 27 million of them don't have enough cash on hand. What's enough cash on hand? 90 days of operating capital, okay? Repeat after me. You got to have at least 90 days of operating capital, cash in the bank, in order for your business to withstand any kind of buffers going on. Well, right now, the coronavirus is big and everybody's concerned. A lot of schools are shutting down. In fact, my college took a precaution. We're shut down for 2 weeks. What are we doing? We are trying to prevent this outbreak from getting any worse than it is. And that's what this webinar is all about. We're trying to prevent bankruptcies. And how do you do that? By managing cash properly. Okay. So 75% of less than 30 days, guess what? 25% of those, which is about 6 million, have less than 14 days of cash on hand, not even 2 weeks, one payroll. Okay, so they don't show up as a statistic anywhere, but I'm telling you, these guys are right on a knife edge, and I don't want you to be among them. So I want you to get an ROI for all your blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Isn't it time, okay? And I want to equip you to make more money with what you've already built. Don't worry about scaling and growing right now. Let's tighten up the business you've already sweated blood to get, then scale it. Why? Because we don't want to scale problems. We want to fix the problems when the business is relatively small. Then we want to scale it when the engine is really working properly. So remember something, okay? The stuff we're talking about here is not the purview of your accountant. Now, your accountant will see your statements, okay? And he or she will know all the nuttiness that's going on in your business, but your accountant isn't going to run your business any more than your mechanic is going to drive your car, okay? So if you learn the basics of invoicing and the basics of accounts receivables, which we're going to talk about today, you will not become a statistic. And this is the stuff that it kills me. We don't talk enough about in college. We don't talk enough about when we're training entrepreneurs. It is time that changed, and that's what these webinars are all about. Okay, so our cash flow roadmap for the first 4 webinars, we have 10 laid up right now on Eventbrite. We talked about invoicing, how, when, how much, and how frequently to invoice. But today we're going to talk about your accounts receivables. That is your pot of gold. Last time we got together, I asked everybody to lift up their right foot, and they thought I was nuts, but I said, just do it. There's $1 million under your shoe, and I'm going to show you how to get at it. I want to talk to you about reading your accounts receivables aging report after today. That's next week. And then how to put an action plan together. Your AR aging report, I'll introduce you to today. But in terms of putting an action plan together, that we're not going to do for next week, but I'm going to lay something at your feet, okay? I would love to get a copy of your accounts receivables aging report. I will black out the name so everybody doesn't have to know who it is, but we will do an analysis in real time of your AR aging report. We can use that as an example. So if you want to send that to me in advance, I am happy to look at it and you get free consulting, okay? And I can bill out at $500 an hour, so that's the deal of the century. And then last but not least, at least in the first 4 sessions, I'm going to talk to you about contacting your clients to pay you without getting agita. Okay, if you are in business for yourself and you are a service provider, listen to me please. Learning how to collect from your clients who owe you money is a core competency you need to have. You need to know how to do this, because if you don't, you're not going to survive. And everything that we're talking about is coming from accounting for the number phobic, which I'll talk to you in greater detail in a minute. But I want to talk to you about some strategic partners that I'm working with. These are people I've known for many years. They are subject matter experts. They're brilliant at what they do. Nina Kaufman actually happens to be on the call today, and we're honored to have her here. She is the founder of Business Exponential. Own a business that doesn't own you. And what is she doing? She's showing you how to create systems and replicatable systems so that you are not a slave to your business. You can go away for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and the business still continues to kick off the cash to support both the business and your lifestyle. And she's brilliant at what she does. She's got a ton, an absolute ton of articles and podcasts that are available to you at no charge. You need to get to know Nina. So I teach you how to run the business. Nina teaches you how to run it on autopilot and how to scale it. So Nina Kaufman actually was the attorney. She does my contract work, and she also incorporated DF Consulting, which is the umbrella under which all these webinars are being done. She probably didn't even know that I was going to do a shout out, but I think the world of her. I've been walking on a journey with her for the last, it's got to be at least 20 years, and everything this woman does is gold. So I encourage you to get to know Nina, and it's really important to us that we have a mission that is bigger than just our own self-interest, and menhavefeelings.org is one of our strategic partners. I don't know if you know this, I learned this fairly recently, that men commit suicide at 3 times, almost 4 times the rate of women, and this is a major crisis. And menhavefeelings.org is an organization that was started by Ben Thrasher, who's been doing a lot of my online work, and we want to invest in that effort because we need our young men to be whole. And Men Have Feelings is a great place for them to build community and for also for them to get the help that they need. So and to find connections. So we're thrilled to be able to be strategic partners with Men Have Feelings. So just so you know, anybody who has paid a gating fee, and it's a very small registration fee, we do give some of that to Men Have Feelings. So, okay, I am Professor Dawn Fotopoulos. Most of you already know that. I work at the King's College in New York City. I am a business professor, full professor there. I am the award-winning author of Accounting for the Number Phobic, a survival guide for small business owners. It is a funny book on accounting. Funny in accounting? Who'd put that together? Well, we did. And it's illustrated by a Disney artist. And it asks 3 diagnostic questions at the beginning. Would you rather spend the weekend with your mother-in-law than read your financial statements, and a few other funny questions? And if that's true for you, you're in very good company. But the point is this: if you're running a small business, you cannot run it with your eyes closed. You need to understand the very, very basics of how to read your financial statements because they're the mirror to your business, and Numberphobic does a spectacular job of doing that, not because I wrote it. I have a wonderful copy editor, and what is in between these 273 odd pages is 25 years of a life's work. And I was very Numberphobic at one point in my life. It took me 15 years in the school of hard knocks to overcome it. I don't want you to have to suffer that way. And if you read a book in 1 week, you could say 15 years of suffering. I think that's a pretty good ROI. We've got fabulous ratings on Amazon. You should read them. And by the way, if anybody does buy the book, all of these webinars are predicated on the content of this book. This book, consider it as our textbook, so you can always go back and read more. But you don't need, the point is not to teach you how to be an accountant, but you need to understand what's happening in your business. And what the book is really, it's a get out of jail roadmap. A lot of you are doubling down on bad strategies. You can't understand why you can't pay your bills. And Numberphobic is a great diagnostic. It'll teach you, are you making any money? If you are, is it enough? And if you're not, what are the 5 things you can do to fix that? Do you have enough cash to pay the bills? If you don't, what are the 5 things you can do to fix that? And are you building wealth or destroying it? And if you're destroying it, what are things you could do to turn that around? So it's really a book on strategy, but it's very effective. And if you do buy the book, do let me know. And I'm happy to send you my study guide as my gift to you. Tiffany had reached out to me last week. I sent her the study guide and she was overjoyed, and it's been super helpful to her. So, okay, so I'm the numbers lady. Not because I want to be, but because they're so important. And you know what your numbers really are? They're your spouse. Yeah, they are. And they're always talking to you, but are you listening? So what you see here is an illustration from Numberphobic. This is your financial dashboard. Your net income statement is like your speedometer on your car. Your cash flow statement is like your gas tank, and your balance sheet is like your oil pressure gauge. And what we're going to focus on today is in the middle here, how to improve your cash flow. So here's the interesting thing about your gas tank, your gas meter, okay? It doesn't tell you to go buy gas. Think about that for a second. It really doesn't. All it does is this little needle over here moves from full to empty, and all these little calibrations give you an indication as to how close to empty you are. It is up to you to do the interpretation as to whether or not you're going to be left on the side of the road in the pouring rain. And so as that needle starts to approach empty, you know instinctively at this point that you got to go get gas. Well, cash is to your business as gas is to your car, or we've used another analogy, cash is to your business as blood is to your body, okay? It's that important. Without cash, your business is gonna die. And here's the thing, I wanna show you how to improve cash from operations, because that is your premium fuel. This is the cash that you don't have to pay back. You don't have to pay interest on it, okay? You've earned this cash. This is the cash that you earn when you sell something, whether products or services. You lock in a gross margin because you sell it for more than what it costs you to deliver. Let's hope, please God. And then you get paid for it. But the getting paid for it cannot be assumed unless you're selling ice cream for cash. So remember something, and please remember this, because most people don't get this. Selling more, getting more customers does not improve your cash flow, okay? Growing your revenues does not automatically improve your cash flow. Invoicing your clients and collecting against those invoices is what helps your cash flow. Now, some of you are probably sitting there saying, this lady is crazy. Of course, we know that. But how come then 9 out of 10 small businesses don't act as if that's true? So I'm encouraging you to stop sitting on all your cash, and let's talk about how we can get access to it. So just to frame this out, there are 3 sources of cash flow. You got cash from operations, which we just talked about. You sell something, you invoice it, and you get paid for it. By the way, one of the things we encouraged last time we got together is you have to invoice the client before you go to sleep at night. If you finished a project, if you ship something off the loading dock, your day is not over until you invoice the client, okay? And I asked everybody to make a promise, literally raise their hand and make a promise that they aren't going to finish their workday until they invoice who needs to be invoiced. Because I'll tell you something, procrastination is not an option, because you know what happens. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, I'll do it next week. Oh, I'll do it next month. And then it never happens. I actually have a carpenter who did work for me. Are you ready for this? 9 years ago. And the guy still hasn't invoiced me. So if he hasn't invoiced me, how much you want to bet he hasn't invoiced a whole bunch of his clients? Okay, don't be my carpenter. Invoice the client on a timely basis. The other two options for bringing cash into the business are loans from banks or suppliers, or equity from investors. And remember something, you take equity money from an investor, you are no longer your own boss. Those investors get to drive what your priorities are. And so there is risk when you accept investors. So Shark Tank is sexy, but there's risk there. Okay, so cash from your operations, we want to maximize cash from operations for those reasons. So don't leave cash on the table. We already talked about invoicing collection is mission critical. Now I want to show you something. This is a sample of a cash flow statement. Don't be intimidated. I'm going to take you through it bit by bit. Operations, this is the money, the cash that comes into the business from invoicing and collecting. Okay, cash receipts from customers, these are customers that have paid you. Not invoiced, paid you. So invoice is only half the challenge. Getting paid for those invoices is the other half of the challenge. And then these are some of the uses of cash, right? You purchased inventory, so that reduces your cash. General operating and admin, you're paying your people, you're paying wage expenses, maybe there's some interest. Guess what? You're paying all of this stuff, taxes, with what? With cash. Okay, you gotta pay your taxes. You gotta have enough cash to do that. So your net cash is the difference between what you bring in cash and what goes out in cash. Think about this part as like a leaky bucket, okay? So here we go. So cash receipts from the sale of property and equipment, that's another way to bring cash in. That's not from operations, so it's separated out. What a property and equipment are, these are fixed assets. So you're selling some of your fixed assets and you raised cash as a result. In this case, $33,600. But you purchased property and equipment for $75,000. So you're in the hole, in the red, in your investing activities, about 41K, 41.4K. Oopsie daisy, where are we? Okay, so cash receipts, financing opportunities. Now this is a publicly traded company, which most of you are not, but at any rate, just know, if you repurchase stock, that costs you cash. If you pay dividends, that also costs you cash. You pay dividends with cash. So between this at $41,400, $87,000, that's cash out of the business. You take those two things away from the net inflows, which is your $47,900, and you're left with a net increase in cash in this particular period, right, of $19,500. So it's money in, money out, money in, money out, money out. What's left over? That's all this is, okay? Every single one of you has a cash flow statement. You may never have looked at it. You may not know that it's there, but if you have an accounting system like Intuit QuickBooks, which most people do, or FreshBooks, or Mint, or any of the other apps that are out there, you have a cash flow statement waiting for your eyeballs. So would you please ask your bookkeeper or your accountant to print this off and take a look at your cash flow statement? And oh, by the way, you want to send me your cash flow statement, we can talk about it on the next call. Okay, so how come cash is tight? How come we always get to that place where we go, oh my gosh, can I pay my bills? I don't know if I can pay my bills. Robbing from Peter to pay Paul, throwing money from my savings, selling property, doing whatever I can, using my credit cards to try to pay my bills. This is what typically goes on in a service business, and I have it here. It's not as clear as I'd like for it to be, but you'll get the idea. Okay, we got a new client. Yay! Everybody's all excited. Let's say you're a website builder, okay? You're a service provider. So week one, you're starting to build a website framework, and so you're investing time and energy, and you're applying your great skills for this client. And now you're waiting for the client to get its act together, and you're still waiting for your client to get its act together in week 3. In week 5, you got to start paying the specialists that are working on your team, the SEO person, the designer, the copywriter, whatever. And since you're sort of general contracting this job, that's all money out. Okay, so all of this in here, you are financing time. You're financing because the client hasn't paid you a nickel yet. Okay, endless changes, which is week 6, and we're going to talk about that for a second. In week 7 and 8, you're waiting to get paid. You sent the invoice, and the client hasn't paid you. So all of this time and effort and overhead has not been compensated for 2 months. This is not okay. So one of the things we talked about in the invoicing webinar that we had last week is if the client shakes your hand and wants to hire you to do a website, you got to get some money up front in week 1. You don't start doing any work until you get at least 20% of the value of the contract up front. So at least when it comes time to pay your specialist, you have something to give them and it's not coming out of your pocket. If the client takes long to get you content, there should be a penalty in the contract up front. The client has to be willing to be on your time frame because time is money. There's an opportunity cost in here, by the way. While you're in the middle of a project and you're waiting for the client to get its act together, there's business here that you can't do because your time is already booked, okay? The other thing I want to tell you, just remind you in week 6, when all these endless changes come, changes cost money. So when the client wants to change something, you give them 2 changes or 3 changes, that goes with the contract. But if they can't get their acts together and you're on change 10, you got to have a scope of change or a change of scope document. And there's got to be a number attached to that. If you want that change, happy to do it. It's going to take another 2 weeks and it's going to cost you another $2,000. And you hand that to the client and the client has to sign it or you don't do the work. Okay? Capiche? Good. Here we go. So if God came down from Mount Horeb and he said, you got 90 days to save small businesses in the United States, Dawn Fotopoulos, what would you do? 90 days is 3 months. The very first thing you do is you improve cash flow for 31 million businesses. Because we could change a lot of things that would help these businesses, but the tip of the spear is cash flow. If you improve cash flow, you reduce risk, and we could literally cut small business failures in half if I could get 10,000 people on this call, 1 million people on this call to listen to what I have to say next, okay? So how much cash is not collected every year? We talked about this last time. $149 billion. And this is the write-off that the IRS has calculated among all small businesses in the United States. This is a catastrophic number. And you know what this means? This means in 2 years, it's 300 billion. In 3 years, it's 450 billion. Are you with me? So Matt Darner, who started Colbox, which is short for collectionsbox.co, is a guy you should know because he's created an app that plugs very nicely and very elegantly into QuickBooks, and it doesn't cost you a dime, and he helps you collect against invoices that in the past were very difficult to collect against or never got collected against. So Matt and I are linking arms. He's another strategic partner. I want to make absolutely sure we can start banging away at this $149 billion because you know what this means? You're sweating blood, you're shipping goods, you're doing all the work, and you're not getting paid for it, and that's not okay. And I don't know about you, but I can't sit on the sidelines and watch this go down anymore. I am so done. So remember, the sale's not made until you get paid. So you sign the contract, your statement of work is done, the client signs off on that, you deliver a fabulous product, the client's all excited. 30% of small business owners never even invoice their clients after they do the work, which is insane. So that $149 billion doesn't even include the invoices that have never been sent. Those are just the invoices that have been sent that have never been collected against. So $149 billion is at risk every single year. So what if we could learn how to claw back at least 10% of that number with an average receivable of 90K? We could save 1.7 million businesses, and we could do it in the next 6 months. I'm telling you we can. So are you on the mission with me? I want to hear from you in the chat box. Are you on the mission with me? I need to know that you are. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Okay, guys. Great. Thank you. Let's keep moving. Okay, you got to stop slaving over sales. I want, like the Eye of Sauron, okay? I want to move your focus from one location, which is sales and revenues and hyperventilating over sales, and I want to move your focus on collecting against the sales you've already done, okay? Because what most people think, most business owners think, is that if you sell more, it'll be easier to pay your bills, and that's false. Because if you sell more, you could actually be scaling losses and, in fact, increasing your risk. So selling more scales your receivables problems if you don't have a handle on your receivables problems when your company is smaller. So fix your invoicing and fix your collections process before you scale your sales. Nobody ever talks about this stuff, but it's true. Slave over your invoicing and collections first. Slave over your invoicing and accounts receivables first. Then worry about sales. Okay, I want you to change your mindset, because being great at what you do doesn't solve your cash flow problems, and selling more doesn't either. Invoicing on time and collecting will. Okay, quick review from last time we got together. What's an invoice? An invoice is not an IOU, it's a you owe me document, okay? It is a legal and binding document. You got to get it out, and you got to put the date on that invoice, because until you do that and the client receives it, the client is under no obligation to pay you. Did you know that? And the clock on that invoice and on their obligation to pay you does not start ticking until you generate that invoice. So the invoice actually becomes a receivable, right? Something that you should be receiving. You're able to receive it. It's a receivable. It is a current asset. And in a second, I'll take you through the balance sheet and show you where that lives. But remember something, please. A receivable is not the Hope Diamond. It doesn't increase in value with time. In fact, it decreases with value, in value over time. In fact, it loses so much value, it loses about 1% per day when it's not collected. Okay, most of us give 30 days of grace to pay a bill. What are you doing on the 40th day, 50th day, 60th day that you haven't been paid yet? Okay, that's the key to what we're talking about today. Okay, did you follow through on your promises? Did you invoice all your clients? Did you capture and include at least one testimonial on the invoice? Did you invoice after every phase of a project? Did you invoice up front when you started a project? That is for a retainer. Did you invoice small sums with greater frequency? Did you learn who the AP clerk is at your top 10 clients? And I asked you, right? I said to you, I want to find out what happened. So what happened? Did you follow any of that advice? Even if you did one thing over this last week that you didn't do before, that's a win. So I'm not here to teach you anything. I'm here to change your future. Okay? So the sale's not made till you get paid. You don't have an expensive hobby. You need to have a viable business. So invoice, collect, invoice, and collect. That's the process. So you've invoiced, now what? So once your invoicing has been completed, you've shipped it to the client, it hits your accounting system, but the question is where, right? Where do these invoices live? So as you create these invoices, and here I just have a simple, they all funnel into a category called accounts receivables. Now, some of you know this instinctively, but you don't know where accounts receivables live. So all of your invoices in the aggregate show up on your accounts receivables, in your accounts receivables, and this is your balance sheet. Ron Buchello, who's my artist, he's the Disney artist. This is one of our illustrations, one of our sketches in Number Phobic. This is your balance sheet. What's a balance sheet? It's a net worth statement. So your owner's equity is what you're really in business to grow, okay? Otherwise, you're just buying yourself a job and then you die of a heart attack and that's the end of it. Or are we really building a business that we can sell eventually? If we can build owner's equity, listen to me please, if we can build owner's equity, then you may actually have an asset that you can sell. So all your time and assets, you get leverage if you can do that. How do you do that? You got to build your asset base faster than you build your liabilities. That's going to give you higher owner's equity. So your current current assets come in 3 flavors most of the time. Cash, you know what that is. Accounts receivable, remember that's all your invoices together. These are all the people that owe you money. Accounts receivable, and then inventory if you're in the inventory business. Fixed asset, and these are all things, by the way, that are cash or convertible into cash within 12 months. Fixed assets are the things that are convertible into cash, and it usually takes longer than 12 months, and there are accounting conventions as to what goes into each of these different categories. But at any rate, your accounts receivable is a current asset. Remember something about accounts receivables, okay? They are captured on your balance sheet at the retail price that you are charging your customers. Your inventory is captured at your cost of goods, or what it cost you to make that inventory. So the accounts receivable has your gross margin locked into it, which is why it's so important that you collect against your receivables. Why? Because gross margin is what you have to run the business. You run the business on gross margin. You don't run it on sales, but you can't run it unless you have the cash from it. Okay, so I want to give you a little illustration of how important this is. So Cozy Friedman is a very successful entrepreneur here in New York, and she had a young son and he needed a haircut. She brought him to the local barbershop and it was a nightmare. This poor kid, he was crying. It was his first haircut. He was intimidated, and it was a very non-kid friendly environment, and it was a nightmare for the mother and for her other 2 children. So she said, you know, what if I could create a really kid-friendly environment for the kids to come and get their haircut and really make getting their haircut fun, something that they really look forward to. And I give this woman a lot of credit because she's got a whole bunch of outlets. She's running a multi-million-dollar operation, and she showed up at one of my workshops a number of years ago. And I was going through the same analysis I just went through with you about what accounts receivable is and why it's important and all that. And she jumped up, it was like 8 o'clock in the morning, and she said, "You're kidding me, that's what accounts receivables are?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "I got, I don't know, let's say a number, $50,000 in accounts receivables." I said, "You do?" She said, "Yeah," because she also sells kids shampoo and a whole bunch of other stuff. I said, "You do?" She said, "Yeah. And I think I'm going to go collect that money." I said, "Good for you." Okay. Because that's what that is. Your accounts receivable is a pot of gold in your business. So the question on the table really is, how come sales don't always convert to cash? And that's how come your invoices aren't always paid. Okay. So revenues and cash conversion, there's going to be a time lag a lot of times, especially for service providers. You're going to, you know, it takes time for clients to pay you. I do business with some very, very large companies. They're my sponsors. And it just takes a month to pay a bill. I know I'm going to get paid, but there's a time lag between the time I deliver my service and the time that they actually pay me. Sometimes clients will take a discount. So you can have an early payment discount, which, by the way, I encourage you to do. So you can talk to the client up front when you do your sales conversation and say, and if you pay within 7 days of receiving my invoice, you can take a 5% discount. And you may actually get paid sooner, and it may be worth your while. Sometimes there are disputes. Well, I'm very unhappy with, you know, the way you installed that sink, and so I'm not going to pay you until you fix it. Sometimes there are poor management controls on the part of the client, which means that, you know, they don't have their act together either, and it doesn't mean that they're dishonest. It just means that they don't have their act together. Sometimes the client is in financial distress, and by the way, this is dynamic. So they could have been a great client 3 years ago, but the world has really changed, and now they're in financial distress, and they're just taking longer and longer to pay you, or they simply stop paying you. And then, of course, there's the big D, which is dishonesty. There's a guy down in Palm Beach that had a boutique down there. He owes me $4,500, And if ever I see him, he will get he will get not the best part of Dawn Fotopoulos, but all of these things will impact your ability to convert revenues to cash. And there are a whole bunch of others, but these are the biggies. Okay, so I want you not just to learn about your accounts receivables, I want you to fall in love with them, because this is the bank. You're the bank, okay? And since we're getting very close to St. Patrick's Day, I thought this image was appropriate. That's you, and that's your accounts receivables, okay? It's a pot of gold, and you got to go after it because it doesn't take care of itself. You have to manage it. Okay, so what do you need to know? You need to know who owes you money. You need to know how much they owe you, each one. You need to know when the invoice is or was due. If it's due current, if it's current, it's within the time frame, so it's not what's called a stale invoice. It's not over the deadline yet. If it is past that, let's say, 30-day deadline, then we have a brewing problem. And in a minute, I'm going to take you through your accounts receivables aging report, which is super important because that's going to give you this information. You need to read both your balance sheet as well as your AR receivables report, aging report. Okay, so the question on the table really is, how do you prioritize and build an action plan around the invoices that have not yet been paid? Because that's the key, right? Okay, so here we are. You want to know where the keys of the kingdom are? They are right here. And every single one of you that has an accounting system has embedded in that accounting system something called an accounts receivables aging report, or in this example, an aging accounts receivables. And it's not brain surgery. Let me just take you through it. Okay, these are all the customers that owe money. This is the total that they owe. So this total, in this case with Denmark Shipbuilding, they have some, let's say 900, almost $1 million that's not yet due, but they have some receivables that are starting to grow some hair on them because they're 30 days, 60 days old. Now this is a problem, okay? 60, 90, or greater than 90 days. In this particular case, take a look down at that bottom right-hand corner. This company has almost $4 million of bad debt they're ready to write off. Anything over 90 days is a major, major problem. So we've got 119 million, okay, excuse me, that's just with SK Traders. I didn't even add up all of these totals. But they've got almost $4 million, and the likelihood that they're going to collect against these two receivables is slim to none. This is where Colbox, right in this time frame, where they can really help you. And by the way, Colbox is a free application. So I'm going to get Matt Darner on one of these calls, and he's going to take you through what Colbox does, how it can help you improve your cash flow. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for people who are willing to be pilot users of Colbox, and we're going to call it Take the AR Challenge, and I'm going to walk you through it, and it won't cost you a nickel, okay? So not today, but in the future, we're going to do that. Probably in 3 more sessions, we will do that. So this is all the money that's due in 30 days, and this is all the money that's 30 to 60 days overdue, 90 and over 90. Okay, I had a lady who bought Number Phobics. She's an accountant in Canada. She said, I bought the book. I read chapter 6, by the way, which teaches you how to collect against your receivables. She had a $95,000 receivable that was outstanding for 2 years. 2 solid years. Okay, that's not 90 days. That's like insane. That's 48 months. Excuse me, 24 months. So anyway, that's not 3 months, it's 24 months. She said, I grew a backbone. I called the company, I went after the money, and it was in my account in 2 weeks. She said, holy cow, I will never get a return on investment like that for a book ever again in my lifetime. Okay. So your accounts receivable aging report is something you should be looking at on a weekly basis, not just once in a while, once a month. This needs to be part of your basic business hygiene. Every single week, you need to know who owes you money and how long they've owed it to you and how much they owe it to you, and how much they owe. And if you don't know how to find your aging report, you got to ask your bookkeeper. And that bookkeeper should be sending you that report like clockwork. Okay, and you got to allocate some of your time to collecting against those invoices, not just focusing on your sales. So here's my question to you. Most of you are working 70, 80-hour work weeks. I know, because you tell me. Would you ever, and most of you have also, by the way, worked for other people, right? You've worked for other companies, corporations, whatever. Would you ever work 70, 80 hours a week for somebody else and not expect to get a paycheck? Would you do that? Of course you wouldn't. Well, then don't do that when you're in business for yourself either. Who pays you? You pay you. Actually, your clients pay you. Their collections against their receivables is what pays you. So don't work for free anymore, okay? So if you don't have a bookkeeper, I've got a word for you. I don't care if you have bookkeeping skills. I don't care if you were an accounting major in college and you're in business for yourself. If bookkeeping is not your core business, you should not be doing your own bookkeeping. You should hire somebody at 40 bucks an hour or 30 bucks an hour to do, or 100, even 75 bucks an hour to do your bookkeeping for you and keep your books clean and accessible, because your bookkeeper is your killer app, okay? It's really easy to do monthly reconciliations. I have a bookkeeper. Could I do my own bookkeeping? Yeah. But you know what? I would rather spend an hour of my time or 8 hours of my life putting together this presentation for you than spending a few hours doing reconciliation. It's not a good use of my time. If I can train you in the time I'm paying my bookkeeper to do the work, it's a much better return on investment for my time. And the other thing too is a bookkeeper is going to reduce your CPA expenses. A bookkeeper is going to make tax preparation painless, especially now that we're in tax season. And they're a very good strategic partner if you don't know where to find a good bookkeeper. By the way, they don't have to be in your zip code. They could be anywhere in the world. There's some very good bookkeepers all over the place. But Intuit has a great site. It's like the Angie's List for bookkeepers, and it's called findaproadvisor.com. And you can go on there, put in the search bar, you can put in your location, or you can put in your zip code, and out is going to pop all the people that are listed and that are certified by Intuit in your area. The other thing that's very interesting is they are rated. So the 5-star people, you can see their background, you can see how long they've been doing this. Look for the advanced designation, okay? Because not all certifications are created equal, even though they may be Intuit certifications. The advanced designation is a special animal in this population, and that's what you're really after. And they're going to cost a little bit more money, but absolutely worth it, right? Worth it. And all you have to do is reach out to your bookkeeper online and say, listen, I need my AR aging report once a week. Send me my balance sheet. I want to look at my accounts receivables, and at least start there. Okay, promise me you're going to do this. Okay, what are some of the things that create risk to payment? I want you to sort of keep your ear to the ground and look at some of these things. As some of these things are happening, they're like inflection points. And so instead of waiting until something is 90 days overdue, look to see if any of these dynamics are happening with any of your big customers, particularly, especially your top 10, top 20. If a client is taking longer to pay, they used to pay you in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, now it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, look at the trending, okay? Because if it's taking longer and longer to pay you, the likelihood is they're having cash crunches. The client is buying more and more and taking longer and longer to pay. That's the kiss of death. Because if they're taking longer to pay, what you want to do is pull the reins in on that client, not open up the floodgates. So you got to tell the client they can't buy anymore until they're current. Okay, promise me you will do that. If your suppliers start to complain about some of the people you're doing business with because they're not getting paid, that's a yellow warning flag. Take a look if a client is downsizing their operation, if they're letting people go and things like that. You know instinctively that that's an indicator that cash is tight. Okay, here's one most people don't think about. If the client has handed over the business to the next generation, I don't know if you know this, but the failure rates between generations is extremely high. And I think the survival rates by the time you get to the second generation is something like 10 or 15%. It's extremely low. So if the next generation is taking over, you got to get to know the kids, and you got to know if they're responsible or not. You got to talk to them about expectations and count this as if they are a new client, because they are. Even if you've been doing business with the father for years and years, the kids are a whole new management. If the client has sold the business to new management, same deal, okay? That represents risk for you. Or if the client's business is under new management, there's been a management shakeup. Whether they're related or not, there's a new management. It is as if it's a new client, and you need to start the relationship and the trust building all over again. But assume the client is going to have trouble paying their bills, and so you should pull in your reins a little bit instead of working on past as prologue, because that's not going to work in your favor. So does everybody on the call know how much money your clients owe you? Do you know this? Put in the chat box if you do. Because if you do, good for you, you're actually among a very small minority. Most business owners, if I said to them, how much do clients owe you, they have absolutely no idea how much clients owe them. So look at your accounts and do it, by the way, before the week is out. Promise me you'll do that, okay? So here's the promise for this week. Everybody, raise your right hand. Are you raising your right hand? Okay, I promise to invoice everybody who owes me money. I promise to get a bookkeeper for my business if I don't have one now. I'm going to go to findaproadvisor.com. I'm going to look for the advanced designation in my zip code. And I'm going to start interviewing people. By the way, always ask them for 3 references of people they've already done business with, and call those references. You are hiring a strategic partner. You need to know the person is worth what they're asking for. You're going to print out a copy of your balance sheet. You're going to look at your accounts receivables on your balance sheet and know how much is in there. You're going to finally get wise like Cozy Friedman. And last but not least, you're going to disaggregate that accounts receivable by looking at your aging report. So the accounts receivable just gives you a roll-up number. Let's say it's $10 million. Let's say it's $10,000, whatever it is. When you look at your aging report, it's going to break that out by client, and it's also going to tell me how much money they owe you and for how long they have owed it. So don't even worry about doing anything about it. Just understand it and look at it and feel comfortable with it, and that's a huge win. Okay, promise me you will do these things. Okay, and if you don't think getting paid is priority, why should your clients make paying you a priority? So let's make getting paid a priority. So if you want more, this is some of the no charge stuff, and it's absolutely radioactive. Okay, if you go to score.org, I have recorded 4 webinars through the SCORE and FedEx organizations. They sponsored me to do this. It is every bit as much good quality as you have here, but I only do them once or twice a year, which is why we're doing this weekly session. You want to learn how to read your financial statements in an hour, maybe hour and a half, you're going to get up to speed like never before. If you input my name, Dawn Fotopoulos, in the search bar on score.org, all of these webinars are going to show up. The power of pricing. Most people have absolutely no idea how to price their products and services, or when and how to discount their products and services. I go through that in Power of Pricing. The 5 things business owners should stop doing to stay sane, okay? Nobody talks about this stuff. And then how to influence bankers and investors to get the right deals for you. Before you open up your lips and talk to a banker or an investor about loaning you money or giving you money, you need to watch that webinar, okay? Join our Facebook group called Numberphobics Anonymous. You got good company. And we want to tell the world that we're here. Please get it out, get the word out to your network. Let them know. Dawn Fotopoulos has office hours at noon on Wednesdays. I have about, I guess, another 8 sessions So if anybody's late to the party, it's okay. They can still join us. And next steps, okay, that's where the Facebook group is, Numberphobics Anonymous. My next webinar is on March the 18th, and I want to talk to you about how to manage your AR aging report, when to get help, because you're going to need it. Everybody does. I want to talk to you about best practices on our accounts receivables management, and that's the Eventbrite link, so you can sign up today. You don't have to wait till next week. Accounting for the Numberphobic, I encourage you to get this book, not because I wrote it, but because it has the potential to change your life. Everybody, we have over 130 comments on Amazon. I make pennies on every book, so this is not about trying to get wealthy by selling a book. This is really about how to save small businesses. If you do buy the book, let me know. And I am happy to send you my, my no-cost study guide as my gift to you. So share the next webinar link to your network, and come on, guys. Let's get on the program. Let's go on the mission together, and let's save 1 million small businesses. And you know what? It's not hard, and we can do it in record time. So you got this. And I'm really proud of you for being on this call. And thank you for taking an hour of your time to listen to what's really mission critical for your survival. I'll take some questions if you have them. If you want to unmute yourself and ask it, you can do that, or you can put your questions in the chat bar. I am open either way. Anybody have any questions?
Hey, Dawn, it's Nina. I've got a question, and thank you for the wonderful plug at the beginning of the webinar, so I appreciate you. I want to jump back to, you talk about the sources of cash flow being operations and the importance of getting money up front. You then suggested a penalty for delays if a client takes too long, like in the situation of a web designer. What sorts of things have you seen with your clients? What kinds of penalties have they implemented, and what's been successful?
That's a really fabulous question. Okay, so can we all please agree that time is money? It really is money. And that's what interest really is. It's the cost of money. So what really should be happening, Nina, that isn't, is that you should be negotiating payment terms in the sales conversation. Once the client decides you're wonderful, they want to do business with you, then you say to the client, if it's a huge client, the client's going to tell you when they're going to pay you, okay? But if it's a relatively small or mid-sized client, you can say, our service standard in our company is that we give 20 days payment term. If you need more time than that, then we add 1% for every week beyond 20 days or beyond 30 days. And you actually bake that into the price up front. And by the way, that penalty is included in your invoice, okay? So your payment terms should at least be in the footer of your invoice, so there's no confusion about what the payment terms are. So if you're losing by 1% a week, okay, in the value of your invoice, what that essentially means, or 1%, what did I say, 1% a day? It might be 1% a day. Yeah, I think it's actually 1% a day. I think that's what the Cobox guys said, which means that you're losing essentially 30% of the value of that invoice in a month's time. 30% is typically your gross margin. So if it takes that much longer for you to get paid, essentially what you're doing is you're giving away your gross margin, and you're working and you're getting paid at cost of goods, which means you can't afford to run the business. Now, I don't know if everybody just got what I just said, but that's essentially what's happening. So what I would do is I would put some sort of a factor. Let's say it's 3%, you know, it's a 3% penalty after 30 days, or 5% penalty after 30 days. It's 10% after 60 days, or something like that. And you know what? There are going to be industry standards about payment terms, and you should go to your industry trade associations to find out what those are, find out what typical payment terms are. And another way to handle this is to say, if you normally would get, let's say, $100 an hour, and you know the client's not going to pay you for 6 months, you don't charge them $100 an hour, okay? You charge them $130 an hour, $140 an hour, because what you're doing is you're baking into your cost of capital. You don't have to actually say that to the client, but if the client says, oh, I'm going to pay you in 6 months, then you say, well, you need to understand that we will charge you a small premium, put small in quotes, right? A small premium if it takes you longer to pay us, because then we have to finance your receivable, because that's what's happening, friends. You got to finance that receivable, and because you have to borrow money in order to finance the receivable, you're paying interest. So you need to pass that cost on to your clients. Nina, did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're very welcome. That was a great question. Anybody else have a question? We have time for probably 1 or 2 more. Anybody?
Well, I'll jump in with
Okay.
another one if nobody's jumping in.
Okay. Okay.
I have some clients who are paid on commission, like they're financial advisors or they're insurance people. They don't really have a lot of control over when they're paid by these other institutions, and how much they're paid. So where would you say, I mean, in terms of cash flow, what would be the tip of the spear for them in terms of the system? Is it just tightening up how much time they spend in actually serving the client? Okay.
Yes. Yes. That's a very good point. Yes. I would say to you, yes, and I think it's on 2 sides of the equation. So on the one hand, tightening up how much time you spend on a client is the cost side of the equation, because your time is an expense. When you're a service provider, that is the expense, is your time. The other thing is, and I know this is true of a lot of financial advisors, if you're very good at what you do and you have a very high retention rate of your client base and you're generating 7 figures for the company, you have negotiating leverage. If you've been there for a period of time, you can go back to that company and say, I want to renegotiate what my payout is. Now, you can't do this up front, right? You typically have to have a pretty long and stellar track record to do this. But one of the things they're terrified of doing is losing a really high-performing salesperson and financial manager. So just to give you an idea, Berkshire Life had actually run some numbers, and they said it costs them about $3 million to replace a high-performing financial advisor who leaves and takes their list with them someplace else. So they are very focused on keeping, you know, the best horses on the racetrack. So yes, first of all, you have to, and then also tighten up your systems. And Nina, you're an expert at this, right? You have to codify, or you have to routinize as much as you can, and then customize what makes perfect sense that's value add for the client. But anytime you can routinize something, anytime you can automate something, that helps claw back time. And there's a lot of administrative stuff that goes on for these financial advisors, and it's really onerous. And if there's anything that they can do to automate that or to routinize it, is one way to claw back time.
Great, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, friends, I'm going to stop sharing in a second unless there are any other questions. Any other questions? Okay, so next week on Wednesday at noon, I'll hold office hours. I'm going to take you through your accounts receivables aging report and how to build an action plan around it. I am more than happy to look at your AR receiving report. There is no charge for that. You can find me at dfatopoulos@gmail.com. That's my personal email. You can send it to me there. I want to take a look at it. I'll probably have some questions or comments. So if you have an AR receivable, AR aging report, you want to send it to me. That's huge value added. Don't miss that opportunity. I'm happy to look at it. And again, we will share it anonymously, but it is enormously valuable for you and also for everybody else on the call. Let's get 1,000 people on this call, okay? Let's change lives together. I can't wait. And thanks a million for being on the call with me. I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everybody.